Okay, so I'm going to come to Patrick from the Scottish Greens first for this question. So, Patrick.
Well, thank you. I'm kind of aware that as you're coming to me first, there's a real danger that I'm just going to start ranting and not stop. So, Mary, if I go on too long, please let me know. I think a lot of people probably know that I was involved in LGBT equality campaigning before I was in Parliament. I was an LGBT youth worker in Glasgow and pretty heavily involved in the campaign to repeal Section 2A back in the first session of the Scottish Parliament. And what I remember from those days and from my uni days in the 90s and what have you, is the level of completely normalized homophobia that people have been reminded about from things like watching It's a Sin just recently. It was chronic. It was everywhere. It was every day, and it tears my heart out to see the way that rhetoric and that prejudice is being retooled and reworked and retargeted against trans people at the moment in Scotland. It's shameful. It's not just the GRA either. Promises were made by all 5 political parties 5 years ago. I was on the hustings that the Equality Network and Stonewall Scotland and LGBT Youth Scotland ran together, where myself, Nicola Sturgeon, Kes Dugdale, Willie Rennie, Ruth Davison, all making these same promises from the political parties right across the spectrum for reform of the GRA and for recognition of non-binary people. Now, a lot of that got dumped and shelved well before the pandemic. So it's not just that the pandemic stopped this happening. Promises were broken. We need to be honest about that. But it's not just about that legislation. Here in Glasgow, there are people waiting 3 years for their first appointment for trans healthcare. Not for treatment, just for their first appointment. And then another year and a half for a follow-up appointment. And at the same time, we have had politicians, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be, maybe a bit inappropriate here. I wouldn't expect anything different from the Conservatives. They voted against repeal of Section 2A. Half of them voted against equal marriage. I expect that from the Conservatives. I don't think we should expect from Labour and the SNP to have openly transphobic politicians arguing for policies which are directly incompatible with trans people's human rights, incompatible with the GRA in any form. Politicians standing up in FMQs and asking the First Minister to intervene to change prescribing law to remove trans healthcare from young people in Scotland. I think it is, okay, I think people have a right to be extremely angry about the way in which this debate has been allowed to become so polarized, so toxic, and so hostile. And I know that trans and non-binary people are just bloody exhausted with it. I think we need a very clear sense of leadership from all 5 political parties that kind of open transphobia is not going to be acceptable, and that we will move on in the new session with legislative reform, but also with improvements to trans people's healthcare, and that we will challenge transphobia when we hear it in the media as well, because it's becoming all too entrenched there too. So there.
Okay, no, thank you.